So getting back to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
I can't get over that.
I love that opening.
Yeah, Evie, wherever you are, thank you.
Yeah.
So, guys, in the description, you guys can go check out her Redbubble store, buy some art. You can even commission her. She's super good to work with. She's very chill. Today, it's Wednesday. It's the Mattriarchy. And we are here to talk about Gene Luen Yang. But first, before we get into that, I just want to go a quick shout out to Pickles and Shabby, who are out there in the world They started today their crowdfund, I believe, for the 4th vestry. I don't have a link to drop in the chat. You'll have to go look it up on your own. It's on Indiegogo. Go buy some fantasy comics, you slackers. Okay. With that, we're ready to start the show. Hey, we've got number one Marmaduke fan.
Hi, guys. I got the coof.
The commies. They did it to him. They're taking down our favorite dog. It's cross-species lines. It's a big trouble.
I want to specifically mention that I blame the Chinese Communist Party for this. Them. Yeah, that's it.
And it's important to also blame the NIH. Let's go ahead and call it.
This is the America virus, after all.
It's co-funded.
I feel like this is somewhat applicable to our conversation about the author of American-born Chinese.
That's a little.
Well, I don't know. Mao got some he mentioned Mao without mentioning that Mao murdered a bunch of people.
At this point, could you call Corona American-born Chinese? Make a meme cover?
Oh my God! Stop it!
I love it.
That's horrible. That's
going to happen before we're done today.
Oh my goodness! It already has. It just happened. You were watching it happen.
I mean, the artistic version where it's got the kid with the half face on the cover, but then it's got all the big coronavirus virus in the background floating around.
Oh.
I'm making it right now.
Okay.
Now, great. Now you've given our viewers the sickness, guys. Come on. Matt C, how's it going?
Yeah, doing all right, doing good.
So you guys are down. You're down in Florida, in the land of DeSantis. How's that treating you?
It's actually cold for a change.
Yeah. It finally. We never see a temperature drop till January, so it feels a bit like you put on a jacket now, and everyone stays outside. So even at this time of year, so we don't have a ton of NIH virus going around. We're doing all right, and I'm a fan. I just gotta say, it's so funny. I'm so glad that we're doing Gene Luen Yang, and even though it's been a chore a lot of times, it's an interesting chore to me. Because I feel
it's
like we
washing
go way back.
Dishes, but they're interesting dishes. They've got good patterns on them.
I don't even think that's fair. I think you're being way too. I think you're suffering from some other non-COVID related malaise there, Twitless.
I want to put a different spin on that. I feel like somehow all of our bullying went through time and space, and we successfully bullied Gene Luen Yang in the past into writing this book.
Yeah.
Because he did so many of the things I wanted him to do. I kept saying, he's such a freaking nerd. And then it was he said, okay, I will try to watch sports. And I will try to, give a fist bump to the cool black coach. He's trying so hard to escape from nerd world. Maybe he can do it in this book.
Well, and that's on the subject of that, the one of the things that kind of pushed him into this direction was, the encouragement of his wife in the narrative. And, that is kind of how nerds get out of being nerddom, is they procreate and they
and seeing him interact as a father
to please and impress and wow their wives. And that's a big factor.
Playing with his kids, I feel like this is the definitely not in Superman Smashes the Klan, but at least for this book, I kind of felt like maybe Gene is heading out of the weird cerebral, stuck in his head, neurotic. Oh God, I just want this guy to figure it out already, phase.
Or at least there's a path out.
I don't think he's ever going to. We're like 5-6 books in at this point, and it's not happening.
Well, and like if you look at the timeline realistically, like we read Dragon Hoops first, but he did Dragon Hoops before Superman Smashes the Klan. So he started working on
that frustrates my thesis.
Yeah, we're not. I guess we're not. We did not deliberately read these in any particular chronological order, mostly in terms of interest.
If this is the last book, this is the book where I can wave goodbye to Gene Luen Yang and wish him luck and give him the thumbs up and say, "You can do it. You can be a basketball nerd. Go for it, Yang."
So, let's go ahead and do a little bit of preface about the book before we continue on with what will probably end up being a quite long fit of panic that I can feel coming off of you guys. So, first of all, Dragon Hoops. This is the library version, which has got an awesome cover that looks like it's textured like a basketball.
Yeah, it's the first and last time Yang touched a basketball.
Oh, I don't necessarily think that's true, but anyway, well, probably never get a chance to ask him.
I'm being mean on purpose.
Yes, you are.
But but it's his fault this book exists. So
I don't. Okay. So this is a giant honker of a book, and what the story was, the premise of the book is that Yang finishes Boxers and Saints, which I still contend is a masterwork, and he needed something else to do with his time, and so he ended up meeting the basketball coach at the high school he taught at, the Catholic school he taught at, and so he ended up saying, "I'm going to do a comic about this year in basketball." Now, I was intrigued by this concept because you may not know this. I used to play basketball in high school. So,
neat.
Oh, yes. I wasn't terribly good, but I come from a long line of basketball players.
Did you have the hair back then?
No, I did not. I didn't have the beard either. So I didn't start growing my hair long until just before I met my wife. So she likes it long, so it stays long usually.
You know what kind of got me into basketball was Slam Dunk, the manga.
Oh, yeah, I thought of that.
So, yeah. Like there is a lot, and I do appreciate, like Gene kind of points this out towards the beginning, that there's some neat overlap, of course, between athletics, competitive sports and superheroes, and like I think sports comics do read well, and of course manga knows this really well, and I suppose Western comics are kind I figuring it out.
Yeah, why didn't we read one of those?
Yeah.
Sports comics in the West have existed. Granted, it was a hodgepodge, but for I think 3 or 4 years, Marvel published
NFL Super Pro,
yeah, and they were NFL stars that were also heroes on the side.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
The premise of hang on a second, I'm going to kill my camera.
All right. He killed his camera, but did he mean to kill his mic?
I did, because I didn't want to make noise. So here, some of the prize of my collection.
Oh wow!
I've got these volumes, these annuals of British annuals of Mr. T and the T Force, Mr. T from the Ruby and Spears show. And the whole premise of this is that they are gymnasts that murderer. What is Mrs. H talking about? I have no idea.
I know Mrs. H from Twitter. Did one of us do set? Are you referencing one of our memes or something, Mrs. H?
I have no idea.
Probably Gandhi.
But anyway, the premise of the
Mr. T show, gosh, oh no.
We'll get there.
The premise of the Mr. T show is that Mr. T was the chaperone for the U.S. gymnastics team, and they'd go around doing gymnastics, which was hugely popular in the early 80s, and solving crimes like Scooby-Doo plus Mr. T plus like teenage gymnasts.
So it's like
That's
Jim
really
Cotta.
cool.
It was.
Oh, I
it
love
was.
that.
It was great. Anyway, so like sports and comics and there's a tradition that's all connected there. And I thought this was really interesting. Looking at somebody kind of discovering the need to get outside of the comfort zone, learn something new. Yang talks about in the foreword and the afterword that part of his motivation was because his oldest boy had started playing for the junior high team, so he wanted to know what this was all about because he had no context to connect with his kid about basketball.
I want to say something about the general premise because I've kind of been. It seems like the theme of every Gene Luen Yang series is, do we feel sorry for Gene Luen Yang or are we annoyed at Gene Luen Yang this stream because of all of the personal drama and the personal, things he's working out through fiction.
All right, let's not beat around the bush. The racial politic.
Right. The racial politics.
That he's always obsessed with.
Yeah. So the thing...
I think if I may, Marm, I think part of your postulation is that the racial politic is really a cover for a personal politic.
I've suggested something like that. He has an interpersonal drama where he's trying to figure out his racial identity. He latches onto racial identity politics as the theme to figure out. But I don't think he has... I think Superman Smashes the Klan is sort of proof that when it comes down to what am I going to say in a Superman comic book about racism, he doesn't really know much what to say beyond racism is bad, and I guess it has something to do with hidden intersectional, basically the progressive theory of racism. He seems to think that
my issue with him, because I'll take that a step further, is the fact that he basically sees America as a passively, if not actively, racist nation.
All right. So part of the thing about Dragon Hoops that I like is he moving in a personally healthy direction? Where the problem is, if he writes a book like American Born Chinese and then he goes off to a career of just writing comics, then I could look at American Born Chinese and say, okay, that was his interpersonal therapy as an artist. He got past it. He moved on. In Dragon Hoops, things like his concerns over the American immigrant experience and, his distaste for what white racism as expressed by, like rude kids yelling, go back to where you came from at a basketball game. He is still having that struggle in Dragon Hoops, but Dragon Hoops is, I feel like it's him moving in a positive direction, at least interpersonally. He's getting out of his comfort zone. He's being less of a neurotic nerd. I still wouldn't ultimately call it a good work because I feel like there are way better things in this genre. A way better thing in this genre is Ed Piscor's Hip Hop Family Tree, where Ed Piscor doesn't stop and say, this is the story of my journey of learning about hip hop. He's just sharing with you his enthusiasm for hip hop. For Yang, it still has exploring basketball is still Yang trying to figure himself out, trying to make a book, but try to figure out the American experience and the American immigrant experience. So it's kind of like I'll give him props for doing something I think he needed to do, which was to step outside of his immediate my American Born Chinese perspective and try to get out of that perspective and look at other perspectives. I think what's kind of striking about Dragon Hoops is
we gotta read that comic.
Yeah, it feels a lot closer to the. I don't know. I also think there's this idea of American sports as like before, like the race riots in 2016. There was this powerful idea of American sports as a unifying element in our body politic, and then things like the Colin Kaepernick kneeling protests, Black Lives Matter, that kind of blew up a normie, apolitical sphere of life where you could be a white kid in the 1990s and you would look up to Michael Jordan and it almost wouldn't occur to you that Michael Jordan was black because you just love the sport. And I guess that's part of the tragedy of this is he's sort of capturing the beauty of basketball as something that symbolized a positive aspect of the American racial story, where it starts as a very white immigrant thing, and then over time it becomes a Black American thing because of excellence. But blacks start excelling in the sport, blacks start rising to positions in the sport, and then they start dominating the sport, right? I don't know if Yang saw that because he's still like a California liberal. That was the other thing that clicked for me, is he's very Californian in his outlook, including in kind of like his upper scale privilege, I guess. So I was able to forgive Yang and not worry about the racial politics element of it, and just try to absorb the American story through these other characters. It also kind of struck me throughout that some of the characters, apart from Yang, seem to have a healthier attitude towards race.
Yes.
Like all of them.
Yeah.
Well, and here's
I think
I want to stop for just a second here before we get onto that. With one of the first things that I caught with the book, right? So let me turn to the right page. Actually, Twitless, you go ahead and say your piece while I look for my thing.
Sure. I actually think I think you might be being a little generous. I think he was trying to be to step outside of himself, but I feel like he just kind of is incapable of escaping this black hole of his own beta male personality.
Oh my god!
And
He's Twitless. Goodness gracious.
So because he's unable to escape that black hole, he ends up subsuming all of these things underneath this paradigm that we just see repeated over and over in his work.
Well, the thing is, I would be on board with you on that, except that like there are moments in the story where the kids, the unity of the kids and the togetherness of the kids, upends what I think you may be right that Yang is just trying to say, well, this is the fact of life, and the kids are just like, my bros aren't racist, they're my bros. You know, there's lots
I can think of a couple scenes in specific. So Twitless, the thing is, I don't want to give Yang a pass, but I kind of want to wish him well and hope that he works it out, right?
Okay.
I'm waving goodbye to Yang and wishing him the best, not knowing, somewhat cynical about his chances, but hopeful for the best. So an example
I'm not even going to say cynical about his chances here, right? Because
let me give you an example. So, man, okay, so he mentions the Ferguson trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so his way of framing that is, he says an unarmed black boy was shot. He doesn't show like a dead body on screen, I'm assuming because he thought that would disrespectful, and then he cuts immediately to the verdict. The problem with now, I'm guessing his reasoning is, well, this was important to what was going on in the school, so I had to reference it.
Mm-hmm.
My problem with framing like that is that's framing that doesn't challenge basically the media narrative at all.
It's
like
also
no mention
incorrect.
of Michael Brown charging the cop, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know if Gene knows about that. But
yeah, he might not be completely unaware.
He researches his topics. He knows. That's one of his.
But he didn't write about that topic.
Right.
Right.
He wasn't writing about Ferguson.
One of the strengths of Yang is the fact that even when he doesn't know something, he can at least appear to know something. Because this will touch on a point that I'll mention later. Because I'm almost 100% positive Yang does not watch the WNBA, and yet he was able to do research into it enough so that he could sound competent when he discusses the WNBA.
And and tells us why we should watch it.
Yeah. Even though he clearly doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
But that's one of those things, though, is it also is like the he's encouraging people to look into it because he believes the WNBA is worthy. But why would he question, the narrative about Ferguson? What's in it for him, right? I mean, even though the Department of Justice cleared all the cops after there was already a state investigation, the Fed swooped it in, and
I want to get to a point about Ferguson and how he used it. So he illustrates it, and then immediately after that, several of the kids and the coach actually took like a not woke perspective on Ferguson. The coach decided that the way we're going to talk about this is we're going to play the game well, and playing the game well is our statement. I think one kid said, I want to raise my fist during the national anthem. And I think one of the black kids in that scene said something like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, so one of the black kids objected to, seemed to at least quietly object to the BLM narrative in his framing.
It was a bit it was a bit ambiguous. The coach, I feel like you could interpret either way. The coach took a more neutral stance, but he didn't quite say what his stance may or may not have been.
It felt visually pulled back. Like, I don't know if Gene feels uncomfortable or he wants to portray the people that he's writing about as uncomfortable, but it didn't feel like a confidence measure, I guess, a confidence approach coming from the coach or the players. Like, he drew them. It felt like he was drawing them in a way where they're kind of like, unsure of them. Like, I don't know. Like, he wants more from them. He's coaching them to understand their racial paradigm. Maybe
there's a recurring there's a recurring theme where Yang is trying to get a narrative out of these real people, and to me, it's sort of like the real people, real ordinary people are so wise, and we hear so little of them in the media. It's kind of like if you get a normal person to talk about Ferguson or Black Lives Matter for 30 minutes, you can get more sense out of some random person than out of any TV pundit. So to me, it was kind of like a voice of sanity was coming from both kind of like the black players and the black coach over for Ferguson. And then the question is, what's Yang's take? And I think Yang is very deliberately trying to distance himself from that take and let their voices speak. But there are instances where Yang's voice creeps back in. At some point, there's a page where they talk about, did Mike Phelps favor his white players over his black players?
Do not get me started on how he treated Mike Phelps.
All right. So the reason that stood out to me...
talk about it. We don't necessarily have to talk about it yet.
Okay. I want to call him out for that page because I feel like that page is where it's one of his weakest examples. So he has like the white coach say, yeah, Phelps gave me a recommendation. He has asked Coach Lue, did he give you a recommendation? Coach Lue says no. So when you're a comic artist and when you visually juxtapose two things, you are saying to the reader, compare these two things. So the obvious comparison is, Phelps gave a letter of recommendation to the white kid. He didn't give a letter of recommendation to the black kid. While the black coach is essentially saying he had a lot of confidence and a lot of faith in Mike Phelps, and actually makes a very beautiful statement of love to Mike Phelps. It's kind of like some of the characters. One of the characters at least says, "I believe." No, it wasn't. It wasn't one of the characters. It was the basketball player.
He's like a father to me, is what he says.
Yeah. So, like, at some point, it said, "I believe in innocent until proven guilty." Coach Lue shows that kind of love to Mike Phelps. For Yang, he's conflicted about it. He doesn't know what to think about it. So he decided to say enough. So, like, if I had just like Googled, I had Googled Mike Phelps because I thought, look, you keep saying you're not going to include him in the book. He's in the book. Clearly, this guy must be famous enough that this is significant. So, I don't know. So, Yang doesn't know what to say about it. Most of the time, he has the wisdom to detach himself from it and let the characters speak. But there are moments like this where I see Yang composing this and making the decision about how we're to interpret this. So we're supposed to interpret this to look for hidden intersectional racism. And I feel like that's where he's failing what he's normally doing a good job at, which is like letting these people talk and let kind of like parts of the American soul speak to me. He's doing something more like the great American nonfiction comic, where he just finds these interesting people and lets them talk. And I feel like he really should have gotten himself out of the spotlight 100% and just let me hear from Coach Lue and let me hear from some high school kids. Yeah. So it's his success and his failure in his book.
One thing to point out about the this exchange is that they're not this they are being framed as similar, but they're really not similar requests, because the assistant coach was asking to go, when he went to college, it was to a smaller school, whereas Coach Lue was going to UC Berkeley, and so those aren't the same at the same level.
Okay,
in
I
terms of that whole thing.
need to point out. Let me see if I can find it. The other part that Yang kind of like glazes over here is the fact that the very second that Lou comes back and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. I was working at Target." He says, "Hey, you got a job?" And Mike Phelps says, "Oh yeah, instantly. You're my assistant coach." Like at the drop of a hat. So the idea that he's like, the idea that it's like, oh, Mike Phelps is really kind of like racist to these students. Like it doesn't. I don't think it bears out with the evidence.
Right. Well,
Like,
that's one thing Lou says is like, I was going to walk on to UC Berkeley. What business did I have walking on to UC Berkeley? So that was one of the or UCLA or whatever.
Yeah, but that's not how. But that's not how Yang frames it. Yang frames
I know,
it.
I know. But I mean, what I'm saying is, even with Yang's framing, it still exists within the narrative because it's Lou's words.
Like it could be like a painful. The coach can be sort of like a reminder of internalizing, kind of not taking enough steps, I guess, towards whatever is supposed to look. I guess reconciliation's impossible, but whatever. Gene wants to see. Yeah, here's a good. Yep.
Yeah, instantly. When can you start? So, but
do you think so? Was the coach the black coach molested by Mike Phelps?
Oh, good gosh, you went there. I wasn't gonna say it. I thought it, and I wasn't gonna say it because I thought that's too naughty.
The undertones are very, very well, I think, intentionally expressed, and I don't know what to think about it. I'll try to share. I mean, he kisses him on the forehead when he sees him. Is that something you do with your coach? I haven't played basketball.
Well, no, I would with my coaches, but I also didn't stay close to any of my coaches. I wasn't that close to any of my coaches, right? The other thing about it is like the relationship that like he specifically says is that they're more like father and son than because Lou didn't. I mean, he didn't have a father figure in the same way, and so that was part of the nature of the relationship.
That's fair. It could be just I'm misreading what tones he's going with here.
I definitely think that Yang, and this is one of my biggest problems with what Yang does here, is this whole idea of innocent until proven guilty is not how Yang frames Mike Phelps. Yang frames Mike Phelps as, we're not going to talk about him, and it wasn't. But like, here's the thing: if
he's got to be honest. That's all.
I'm just going to say it this way: if a black man or a Chinese man had been accused of something, I think Yang would focus on the injustice of a man who had been ostracized but had not been found guilty. But Mike Phelps gets to be this guy who basically gets to be essentially guilty forever. And I'll find some panels. A chunk of actually, I'll have to say this: a chunk of the conflict of this book, in the metatextual sense, is Yang saying, "I'm not going to include him in the story. He's going to be."
And the other one reason why I keep trying to grab onto Yang's motivation. One reason why would be, well, great. I'm trying to write about basketball. Do I want to have an innocent, until proven guilty story? He ultimately did decide to include it, and including with his immediate framing of the topic. Now, once you decide to include it, then you are making a representation of this man that children are going to read about after he's dead. I think this coach has passed away.
He's passed. Yes.
Yeah. So,
here's the other thing: he was never even formally charged. Really.
Yang doesn't come out and say anything about innocent until proven guilty. He basically just says, "Well, I felt uncomfortable talking about this. I finally decided I had to talk about this." Again, it's sort of like the humanity of Coach Lou. The humanity of Coach Lou is shining in that moment. That is a moment of pure-hearted Christian charity that Yang himself is conflicted about, and that page sung to me. Like, here's a guy who's so committed to his coach, and really he's sort of like illustrating the principle of what innocent until proven guilty looks like. It means that you show a man an act of charity, even if people look at you funny.
Even though Yang clearly thinks he's guilty and frames him in the story as such.
Well, and that's one thing that Yang is. I don't want to say not honest about, because he mentions it, but like he and Phelps had a relationship too, and it wasn't a good one. He thought Phelps was a jerk, and he says it between the lines repeatedly. He was there when I first started, then and he was unpleasant. And then
I thought you said he was just a quiet guy, didn't speak much.
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't like him though.
Okay.
And then
I didn't pick that up.
I did not pick that up.
I did not pick that up.
Yeah.
I picked up that he knew of him, but kind of didn't have a strong opinion on him until like the accusation.
Well, maybe I'm reading that.
And then he frames it in terms of the whole like broader Catholic Church issue, which is an issue, but like it's you can see the way he frames it is he's framing it along the lines of like, oh, he's another one of those ones who basically got away with it.
I'm not sure that. Okay, I want to push back against you a little because I was on the fence about it, but I wasn't sure of that. I thought one reason why is if you're in a school and this happens, it's the talk of the town. Everybody's wondering about it, and one of the reasons why, like I believe in innocent until proven guilty as like a tattooed on my forehead kind of thing. One of the reasons why you have to believe that is if someone is accused of something, there's a pall over the whole school or the whole church board, right? So you actually kind of have to force yourself to act with that mentality, because the most easy thing in the world is, oh, he got accused, must be something there. I thought he was describing the pall, or like the moment of confusion you have when your colleague is accused of something like that. I didn't get a he thinks he is guilty vibe. I got a he doesn't know if he's guilty or not, and he still feels uncomfortable about the accusation.
I think it could go either way, but I think the way he frames that page, again, juxtaposition as who was bringing up juxtaposition? Was that Matt? Juxtaposition is really important for a sequential artist, and you as a sequential artist, you know what you're doing and what you're implying when you put two images next to each other or two ideas next to each other. And if you go back to that page I just pulled up, you have that picture of him looking down, and then right next to it is, well, the Catholic Church was dealing with all these sex scandals at the time.
Right. So you have the emotional baggage of the Catholic Church, but in my framing, he's applying that to the emotional turmoil of that living in that moment in the school, and not necessarily saying the Catholic Church is guilty of these crimes. Connection, Mike Phelps is guilty of these crimes. It's almost like Yang neither inserts himself enough into the narrative for me to say this is what Yang thinks, nor does he withdraw himself from the narrative for me to say Yang has established emotional distance and he's just presenting an interesting things. So I don't get, I see your reading, Twitless. I didn't get that vibe. All I got was just like the painful it's like there's a painful question marks scrolling around in Yang, as with everything else.
It's possible. Like I said, by the time I hit this point in Yang, and this is a point I wanted to make overall, maybe I might say that for later, but like short preview, I've hit a point with Yang where I feel like I'm kind of done, and I think I've kind of realized that like I kind of don't like him very much as a person. And just because of his attitude towards life. And Matt has a way of encapsulating that. Do we want to talk about that now or later?
I really want to hear about Gandhi
later. Let's talk about that later.
I got that too.
Let's talk a little bit about the framing of the book, because I will tell you, I'm going to bury the lead a little bit. I actually do recommend the book. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I thought that when Yang was able to showcase the players, the other teachers, was really good. His history is mostly spot on. If you know your history, you can spot what he got out of a Wilson textbook instead of real history. But as a whole, I liked it. I didn't even notice the subtitle on that one. Mine's covered.
Oh yeah, some of them
Steps
have
to Great Leaps.
All right,
that was a really fun design element of the thing. But anyway, so
you liked that? Oh,
I did like
The
that.
steps.
Yeah.
Oh, that motif, yeah, it was definitely like Gene is like, because the whole point of this book is.
So
him,
here's the question I got to ask Matt: did you read it in one sitting?
2 sittings.
2 sittings. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
See,
yeah,
I
that
think
was
that
the same
actually
for me.
affects. I think that actually affects the way you internalize it. To be
I'm a
honest.
one-sitting boy.
Yeah, I just sat down on my couch with a beverage and just read until everybody else in the house was asleep. So
I think the beverage is why you liked this.
Yeah. no, it wasn't
Okay.
even alcoholic. It was like a coffee with cocoa in it.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just
I
kidding.
wasn't even drinking the hard stuff on Monday.
Okay. No, but like you could tell Gene was and you can tell because he flat out admits it. He was desperate to find a through line for this book, because the line that he wanted to write and the one he probably should have written, he was too much of a coward, unfortunately, to actually pursue, which was the real story behind the 2 main leads, which is Rab and Austin. And he basically asks them about their story, and they're a little bit standoffish about it. And he goes, "Okay," and he never pursues that.
I'm a bad interviewer.
And instead, he goes, "I'm a bad interviewer. I'm a bad journalist." And then he talks about himself over and over again. He didn't even intend all the games. He tries to get out of one of them. He does just ditch one of the games. He was not that in. There are times where I wonder about his investment in this project. When he's offered at the very end, "Hey, you could follow us again for another year," he's like, "No, I'm leaving the school." and
Superman.
He ends it with, "Oh, my family and I," and this is funny, the after notes. He ends it with this family picture of everyone smiling and playing basketball. But he actually admits, he said this is fiction to give it a good ending. He said, "We played basketball occasionally and we mostly fought." So he's clearly selling a product here, and that to bring it back to Matt, what Matt was like kind of cringing at, the step thing, taking that step is clearly like, I think, his attempt to create a motif that will bind this book together. Because
I'll give you that it's definitely true. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that that affects the product, because once again, like, okay, so you guys all know how much I hate the second part of Mouse, right?
No,
I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
I hate the second part of Mouse.
Tell me more.
Just the self-referential part or the whole thing?
The self-referential part, yeah.
Okay.
Which is most of the second half of Mouse. There's so much self-referentialness in it that it really ruins a lot of the narrative.
Do you not like how he's relating to? Because I like some of that in the fact that you get to see how you get more of his dad, in a sense, like how his life is contemporarily, essentially, like impacted by those events. You know, his coupon clipping obsession with like money and
right. No, like that part I thought was fine, but it was overshadowed by all of the navel gazing that Spiegelman does.
Oh, don't read back. If you don't like navel gazing, don't read Alison Bechdel.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah, I've read some of that. All right.
Anyway, but the thing is that there was a lot of that in the subtext in this book, there was only one like set of scenes that is so painfully navel gazing that for me it was easy to ignore.
Or the scene where he talks to himself.
Where
literally.
he talks to himself. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's great. On to the next thing.
I want to fight Twitless some more, Matt Reeves.
Okay.
All right. So
okay, that's fine.
All right. So it's kind of like we have the Gene Luen Yang's, racial dilemma argument, and then we have the framing device of Dragon Hoops argument. So I would give Dragon Hoops a 6 out of 10, meaning I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I hated it. I would recommend someone read it at the library. This is kind of a goofy, guilty pleasure book to me. It's not nearly as well constructed as American-Born Chinese or Boxers and Saints, and things like The Step are an awkward way for Yang, who likes to construct well thought out plots, to try to add a framing device throughout all of what are essentially a bunch of mini-sodes about basketball. I really like nonfiction comics. I think that's the big fat unexplored territory in comics. And so there are nonfiction comics I would say are 10 out of 10s. This is only a 6 out of 10, but I kind of like the idea of it enough that I'm willing to forgive, or I'm not willing to forgive like Yang's like kookier stuff, like which I think especially showed up in not what is it? Superman smashes the Klan, right? But I kind of want to say, okay, Yang, that's your perspective. What did you do in Dragon Hoops? What he did in Dragon Hoops is talk to a lot of different people. Some of their stories are kind of interesting. Some of the stories are kind of forgettable. But he did successfully step out of his comfort zone. So I give it a pat on the head. Good try. I kind of had fun with it. Feel to it. That's my pushback against Twitless.
That's a real soft pushback.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe for Twitless, it's maybe part of the problem is we've been torturing you with Yang so much that now you have Yang on the brain. Now you need to write like your comic about overcoming your interpersonal turmoil with Gene Luen Yang.
So Fizz in the chat, I just noticed this said this comic does not interest me, so I'm leaving the chat. That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Wait. Oh, before you go, I'll just if you haven't already left, we'll see. But if you haven't already left, next week we are talking patriotic comics. We're gonna have Tim Lim, Captain Frugal, and Captain Cummings on, and we're gonna be reading the first issue of Fighting American.
Nice.
So yeah, that's next week's discussion. So.
All right.
Can I share my screen on something and we could just get this out the way? I think.
All right, here we go.
People would find this interesting. So this is Orson Welles, Alpha Chad Orson Welles, who apparently never liked Woody Allen at all. He doesn't like people of this particular personality type, and his read on Woody Allen and people like him is that they're not shy, they're actually arrogant. So they're looking for ways to turn every situation to themselves. Well, I'll just read what he says. I think.
Yeah.
Wells said Allen had the Chaplin disease and that his dislike for Allen was physical. When the writer suggested Allen was not arrogant but shy, Wells went into a monologue about how much he hated the man. And here's the citation. He is arrogant. Like all people with timid personalities, his arrogance is unlimited. Anybody who speaks quietly and shrivels up in company is unbelievably arrogant. He acts shy, but he's not. He's scared. He hates himself. He loves himself. A very tense situation. It's people like me who have to carry on and pretend to be modest. But to me, it's the most embarrassing thing in the world. A man who presents himself at his worst to get laughs in order to free himself from his hang-ups. Everything he does, this is big, everything he does on screen is therapeutic. So there was a lot of that in Dragon Hoops, and that's kind of what we keep circling, is that in order to get past his hang-ups, Gene spends a lot of time turning other people's stories into his story in a way, and he has to part of this could be like 20 current year California, where you have to confidently and repeatedly express your position. As an Asian American man, I think this about basketball. But a lot of this also, I think, is a personality thing where he loves himself, he hates himself, and that's kind of what that's probably a great way to summarize all the stories we've read so far, and it still happened here where I saw way too much of them. I wasn't very excited about the story until I started to see the confident, amazing, super heroic basketball players.
All right.
Yeah, so
I have a panel that Rhys, I got a panel I got to share that's germane to this. So I think this all stems back to American-born Chinese. Let me see if I can zoom in here just a little bit better than that. But in this panel, Yang with one of the other Chinese players,
And this is by the way, and just to specify, this guy is an exchange student, so he's from China.
Yeah, he's from China.
Yeah, from China directly.
We walk past a group of Chinese businessmen. I have the Mandarin of a 3-year-old. What are they saying, Alex? This right here, and you look at the two of them next to each other. This is Gene Luen Yang in personified. Okay, look, his slumped shoulders with his little iPad or or iPhone or whatever, and he cannot relate to the culture that he feels like he most identifies with.
Yeah.
He has to ask someone from China to translate Chinese. This is the core of what, and it's not just him. I mentioned earlier, there's a writer called Wnba Lahiri. She writes some stuff that you'll often read in like freshman, sophomore English. One of them is called Interpreter of Maladies. You probably know someone who read that. And Wnba basically says,
I think I do know somebody who read that.
I mean, there's me, but yeah. I mean, there's like, if you just like, shake a stick at some college student, someone will go, oh yeah, I read that in freshman comp or something. But Wnba says in an interview, and she really encapsulates perfectly what Gene is going through. But Wnba says, because her parents were from India. She's like first generation immigrant. And so she says, I'm not from America. I don't look like these people. I don't quite connect with these people. But she says, when I go to India, I don't connect with them either. And she basically, it's almost kind of sad because she just kind of, looks at the camera or whatever and says, I don't have, I don't know if she's looking at the camera, but she says, I don't really have a home. And that is like a chunk of what her fiction, or at least the stuff she's dealing with this monolith she can't get over. She has no home. At least she thinks she has no home. So what I think is very interesting, I'll wrap this up real fast. Gene is clearly dealing with this, and it's like he's in the same boat as Lahiri, cannot get over it. It ends up being something he has to write about constantly whenever he runs into anything, whether it's Superman or basketball. What I think is funny or interesting, and what I really would love to spend a little time talking about at some point, is the fact that for someone like Tim Lim does the opposite. Tim Lim basically says, I am super American, and just jumps into the flag. And it's such a, and the reason why I think it's interesting and I'd love to explore it more is because it's so different. When you go to college and you read about authors like Yang, you get this type of story. You get the author who has got all these insecurities and constantly just cannot get over them. And it goes with sad puppy dog eyes. I have no home.
Now, what if he's trying to find the American story? What if he'll talk about Mr. Basketball, right? So he'll talk first he'll talk about the Harlem Globetrotters, right? And, pickup games before the NBA. And the Harlem Globetrotters will play against Mr. Basketball. And then later he'll come back and visit Mr. Basketball and make the point that Mr. Basketball is like this big, tall, lanky, white
Mm-hmm.
dude. I don't remember if he was supposed to be like some kind of Slovakian immigrant.
He
was. But it's sort of like, even if it takes him like saying, oh, look, a white immigrant, right? They're an immigrant. I understand that. I connect with that. He's looking for these stories. And in some ways, like, white America comes off pretty nice in Dragon Hoops. We see like the funny old guys with the big mustaches inventing the game, for the Young Man's Christian Association missionary work. A female Russian immigrant, she invented a version of the game for women, and it took off. It's kind of like he's doing really basic, Wikipedia level, discussions of the history of basketball. But I remember, again, not 90 as a 90s kid, you'd learn about what's his name inventing basketball as one of these great American stories. This is the American success story. You can come up with something nobody ever came up with before. So I see Yang as tripping and falling on his face a lot and hung up by the progressive culture that he's mired in. But I see him as a guy who's walking around, tripping, falling on his face, but maybe kind of stumbling in the direction of finding the goodness of American culture.
That may be. And so one thing I have to say, and I think
that before.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to riff off something Marmaduke said, because I think you're right, but I think this is going to feed into what I think you're going to say.
Okay.
Because I think that one of the things that Dragonhoop shows us is in some ways, if I'm not misusing the phrase, I think that Yang may be whistling past the graveyard of what America is without even knowing it, right? And check this out, this little thing I had. Let's look it up here. So it's the Zhao is the guy, the Chinese exchange student, and he starts off the season rough, but by the mid part of the season, his long shot game has won him a spot in the love of his teammates, and they're showing him homage with this little mock Chinese gesture. That go ahead and scroll down just a little bit, if you will, Twitless, just a scotch.
Dude.
So they said. So here's Gene's insertion. Culturally insensitive, maybe, but Alex doesn't seem to mind. Right? That's
all right.
Let's think it. Alex doesn't mind because this is brotherhood that he's showing them. They're not.
It's not culturally insensitive. That's
but is it culturally insensitive? That's the thing.
That's what's interesting is asking the people involved. It sounds like it's not culturally. It's like it's in the mind of the bowl. It's in the mind of the person who wants to frame this. Gene.
But that's the thing about like in this story. We see that basketball was invented to give white adolescents something to do, and then all of a sudden it's something that everybody, not all of a sudden, over the course of the 20th century, it becomes something that everybody can rally around. Right?
The most helpful part of this book is these kids, right? So it's sort of like these kids are trying to communicate it to Yang. Yang is kind of getting it, and he's still reserved about it. So I'm simultaneously annoyed with Yang while feeling hopeful that yes, he got a glimpse of the American multiracial kids unified by a common goal of celebrating basketball.
Right. And one of the things that they're doing with this is they're not even trying to explain it to him. They're breathing unity through their love of sport. Right. Oh. Right. And so this comes back to something that like has been a bugaboo for me for a long time. And I'm sorry, I'm totally derailing into it. But these kids are amateur athletes, right? They are people they are just normal people that are playing, and they have aspirations of making it bigger, whatever. But the thing about high school sports, the thing about amateur sports is it's doing it for the love of the team, for the love of the game. And it's not about investing it's not in the same way as investing your ego, the ego of the audience into the players, where they're performing sport for the audience. It's that somewhat, but not to the same level, because we've given over sport to a professional class that are paid entertainers. And here we have a situation where these are kids that are on that ground level, that are participating for themselves, for their families, for their school. It's still very local. It's still very rather than being some product in the same way.
Could you highlight Taylor Gibson in the chat? I think that might be something to have open while Twitless finishes this point. Yeah.
Okay.
So the point I wanted to make is that, and this is kind of as a response to what Marm was saying, is that I think that a more generous reading is certainly possible for this, and I certainly hope that Gene is making that progress that you're talking about. My issue is that, and this is something that I mentioned earlier, so I'm sorry that I'm repeating this for you guys who heard it before. When you read in a series of works or the over of a particular author, you're not just reading the words on the paper or looking at the images. You are spending time inside that author's head for a span. So when you read a bunch of C.S. Lewis's work, the Chronicles of Narnia, you're not just reading the stories about the fantasy, you're also spending time inside C.S. Lewis's mind. And you're getting to spend time with a particular person, because that's what art is. It's us putting ourselves in a way on the page. So the cool thing about C.S. Lewis is after you read 6 or 7 of his works, although you might get a little bored when you read, I don't know, Horse and His Boy here and there. The thing is that you're also spending time with a man who struggled, an intellectual man, a very smart man who spent time wrestling with and then finding God. And then a man who spent a lot of time talking about the love of Christ. In addition to that, you're also spending time with a man who loves myth, who also believes strongly in right and wrong, and in heroes and heroism. So I don't mind spending, the hours and hours and hours of my life with C.S. Lewis. Same thing with Tolkien. Tolkien loves trees, and when you spend a lot of time with Tolkien, you might get a little bored when he stops and just starts talking about a tree for 30 minutes. In fact, there is an interview where he just about almost does that. You can look it up. He's walking across the campus at Oxford, and he just stops and starts talking about a tree. But again, Tolkien's very similar. The problem I have with Yang is the fact that we've been reading so many of his works, and over time, I've been spending time inside Yang's head, and that's what I've grown. I'm tired. I'm very weary of Yang's head because of what Matt C just brought up. Because we're spending time inside of a person who is just so bloody insecure in his life. And maybe he's getting better. That's great. Overall, though, it's like, here's one more journey into a very insecure author who just is so obsessed with, maybe not obsessed, but he just sees the world through a racial lens. And I'm like, I'm just tired of spending time inside that headspace. So I think that has very much colored, it's colored the work for me.
Hey, yeah, Gene sets it up. Twitless is just he's just calling balls and strikes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
I'm never making clubs.
Gene needs to get past. I agree with Twitless's assessment. I just feel like Gene is progressing. He's just progressing and tripping and falling on his face, and then he gets back up and maybe takes another baby step. I don't think he's woke. I think he.
I definitely see him as a woke Catholic.
All right.
Yeah.
I think he's Hillary Clinton woke, not AOC woke. And maybe that's splitting hairs, but
I think that's actually a big difference.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. What would get me to turn on him would be expressly talking about the critical race theory topic or expressly talking about the intersectional topic. Until then, it feels like an undercurrent or a question of his work.
Well, and I think Mrs. H actually has something to say about that topic here in the chat. She says, so this is a guy dealing with an internal struggle, and the only way he can make sense of it is to manifest a cause that he can point a finger at. And I think I think that may well be a factor in it, especially since the thing, like I said, for me, it's pretty easy to divorce the Yang's personal aspect from the story of the kids and the coaches, right? Because like I said, I used to play basketball, so like there were moments in here where like it's hitting me, right? We were in the playoffs my senior year, and we did not make it. I wasn't good enough to make the varsity squad, so I was the manager, but I was still there on the court when it all went down. So we were just first round of the state playoffs, and we got bumped completely out of it. Oh man, it was hard. But I mean, I was in this situation. I had an investment in it. So for me, it's easy to divorce Yang's internal, malarkey from the kids' adventure, especially when you have moments like we have on the screen, where the kids are just like, they are unified in their love of the game, their love of each other. And for me, like that's the story that I came to see. Yang being a nerd who never got into sports and couldn't figure it out. I was the nerd who was into sports. So I was, it was one of those things where, like, for me, it was a trip back in time into that space. So it wasn't hard for me to separate Yang's, neuroses or whatever you want to call them. Not even neuroses. That's not being fair. I think it's a genuine conflict he feels. I don't necessarily think it's legitimate, but it's definite.
I will say, one of the parts that I think shines pretty strongly, a character who we should probably talk about a little bit, Ivan Rab. I think they call him Reverend. I think he prays before games, and he's very soft-spoken, and it kind of seems like he's got braces. He kind of just, you just kind of like him. And the guy he's kind of like his partner in crime, as it were, not partner in crime. His partner, in a sense, on the team is Paris Austin, and Austin has like a chip on his shoulder, but Rab is just kind of like, you know, I don't know. He just plays a good game and is a good sport. And I think he's the real. He may be, in fact, the real one of the main stars. I think of the book. Which is
almost all of the kids that he interviews come off as, you know, well-spoken and thoughtful. All of them seem like they have he couldn't get the long, you know, complete story of these two characters. No, I need to know the backstories of my characters. I think he joked at one point. Yeah. So like basically, every kid he interviews, it's a vignette. It's a vignette of a high school basketball team, from the kid who's at the top of his game to the small kid who's a backbencher and gets his one moment to make an important play.
Yeah. And those are the moments that I really loved, right? Because like we're getting to see, you know, what these guys are bringing to the court, you know, and their successes and their failures and their need to work together more. And even the moments like you saw that Ivan and I forget the other kid's name.
Paris Austin.
Paris, right? Paris. Where there's some conflict midway through the season over who's, you know, showboating the most, right? Because they both have their eye on those scholarships and that sort of thing. But at the same time, you see them come together, and you know, for the sake of the team rather than their own glory. And I think it was a great moment to watch, because, you know, like I said, I've been there in the paint when those sort of things happen. So it's fun.
One thing I do have to point out, because I actually looked into the careers of both of these the main stars, well, it's so this is where I actually have to tell a slightly heartbreaking story. But it's also true, and it's important for people to hear it, because there was a guy who played. I taught at a school, and there was a guy who was getting scouted to play professional baseball, but there's professional baseball with like a little lowercase p, and then there's professional baseball with uppercase p. Oh, yeah. And the same thing with all sports. So the thing is that if you get recruited to go pro, it's only the top of the cream of the crop of the professionals that you get to see on TV that make the money and get like really all the attention. I think Rab is playing in the G League right now. So he's playing for, I think, one of like the farm teams. So the thing is, and this is the thing that a lot of athletes in college just need to know is, it's not to squash your dreams, but it is to put some reality there, is the fact that, like, more often than not, you will not make it onto the Chicago Bulls. And if you do play professionally, you're going to be making hopefully a living wage, but like you need to have a backup plan. And the same thing, Lou basically says that, because I think he says it of Paris Austin, because Austin's kind of showboating and he's kind of misbehaving, and Lou is yelling, and Yang's kind of like, you know, uncomfortable with that. And then Lou says, Austin reminds me of myself. People like that are kind of good at the game and they feel like the rules don't apply to them. But Lou pulled, I think he was his hamstring or something.
Yep.
He ripped it, and that was the end of his any professional hopes that he may have had.
And he wasn't even on the field.
Yeah. He was running backwards for $5. So the thing is that I've seen people who this applies to, and the student in question who was getting scouted deliberately like threw away his education. Like, he was in my class, and he like just shy of purposefully failed like tests in my class. Like they were doing, if anyone remembers, Blue Book tests, where you write in the Blue Book your short essay answers. And I collected his, and I opened it, and it said, "I've got nothing." Like that was the level of work he put in. So it wasn't even just like I'm attempting and failing. He was like, I'm getting scouted. I've got, you know, my eyes on this professional, you know, a career, and I hope he made it work because he sure screwed up some his last semester.
I don't know, that story hits a little hard to home for reasons I'll tell after the show's over.
Okay, right.
Which actually seemed to be kind of like an undercurrent of Dragon Hoops was a lot of the main high school cast seemed concerned about their grades. Maybe Gene even made a point of including that. Yeah, and you mentioned like the captain, the coach Luke line. So
it's a private school, Catholic private school, so there's going to be some of that. Yeah.
I kind of see high school basketball and really all high school sports as this is exercise and it's sort of civic team building. This is why I think manga do it so well. Is like manga authors are obsessed with the idea of competitive bonding. We're rivals, but together we're going to work together and win the championship. Like I want kids to go on that character arc when they're in high school. Sure. And yeah, realistically, you being a basketball player is like a guy who tells jokes becoming a professional comedian. It's one of these top 1% of 1% of 1%.
Yeah, you have a better chance of winning the lottery in some cases.
Go for it. If you're good, go for it.
Sure, yeah.
Have a backup plan. Yeah.
Pursue your dreams, but have a day job, have something you can do afterwards. Do not basically throw away your education or connections because you're going to make it into the NBA, because more often than not, you won't.
Well, and that's not, I mean, like, realistically, like, you have a better job making a living telling jokes than you do making a living playing basketball. Like, there are more venues for that sort of thing than there are for playing basketball. That's a fact.
If you're including writing
and getting paid at it, I guess, because you can play basketball anywhere, but getting paid for it is
right. That's what I mean. I mean, because the internet, people have created whole careers that traveling, the whole thing, doing tours. You can do it's just like comedy is like indie music. It's totally possible to make a living doing it. It may not be a great living, but you can do it. But there's only so many places you can get paid to play ball. And there are other jobs related to sports. That's very true. Tyler in the chat mentions.
That is fair. That is
that's true. So
that's funny because Taylor's not a big sports fan either, but that's a very valid point.
Well, I know people that played ball that went on into sports medicine. They're like, I'm never gonna be better than starting on my junior college team, but I want a living, so I'm gonna transition into medicine. So they actually are able to, if they apply themselves, stay in all the stuff that they care about, but actually make a living at it. So plus you can be at for longer. Professional athletes, they can't play forever.
Right. You actually, the thing is, between injuries and the fact you just age out, you actually have, and this is another thing I've heard of. I haven't done a lot of research into it, but I know it's a thing. But of NFL players who don't know how to manage their money and who are basically impoverished a few years after they're done playing. It's just like, because like you have your 15 minutes to make your fortune, but you really have to, because even amongst sports stars, you have sports stars, and then you have Michael Jordan or Shaq, the people who really can get endorsements,
who sell shoes the rest of their lives.
Yeah, they can get endorsements 30 years after their prime. A lot of other players, like, they don't have the name recognition. They're not going to get the same opportunities.
Having the what is it? The Space Jam theme song, triple platinum, best selling record all time. Mm-hmm. That's Charles Barkley, I think, who does the Space Jam rap.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Oh, that's a riot.
But we're like Deion Sanders, who went on to coach college ball. So after he retired from the NFL. But anyhow. So yeah. Are there any specific things you wanted to talk about in the book?
I really want to hear Matt C. go on about Gandhi.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
I want to talk about Gandhi and women dunking. Those are the two things I know.
Yeah. Okay, let me pull up. Let me see. Let me pull up the Gandhi page.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember which page that was?
I already got friends DMing me about that page. And
Okay,
I
the
was
weird
like,
story I always heard about Gandhi is he apparently had 9-year-old girls sleep with him to keep him warm.
oh gosh. Yeah, I've heard awful things. I haven't heard that.
Oh man.
Do you have it, Twitless, or I can?
Well, just
Okay,
if you have it, you can pull it up. If you just tell me which page it is, I can pull it up too.
That
So.
was bad.
That I
strip.
don't know. I was just memeing. I was just screen capturing the.
Oh, okay.
So I'll. Here we go.
Oh, here we are.
Okay.
I've got it. All right, I've got it too.
Okay.
If you want to look at
Or
another
either
page.
one. Yeah. Yeah. Or actually, share Twitless's because he's got the full page. That might give a little more context.
Okay, where is Twitless's?
Which? Give me 1 second. Are we talking about page?
I don't know. I didn't look at it before I closed the window.
I don't know.
See it up for sharing.
I got it. Okay. There's a couple pages we can take a look at.
Yeah, it's really a 2-pager.
Yeah.
There we go.
Who wants to read this one?
Okay, every now and then, though, Javine is reminded that he is an outsider. O'Dowd's religion department deeply admires Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of the Indian independence movement in Britain's Indian Empire. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence is similar to Christ's. Every semester, the Peace and Justice class does a unit on Gandhi.
wall of
Sorry.
text.
And we're done.
I just noticed Evie in the chat. No, I don't think the walls of text necessarily bad, but let's get on this.
I'm just playing.
Yeah. Everybody knows him for his nonviolent stuff, but he's the one who wanted to partition of India, driven by Winston Churchill and his planners. The biggest forced migration of all time. All in all, I think between 250,000 and 500,000 Sikhs were murdered. He sent 2 million Indians to fight in World War I because he thought it would make us look more favorable to the British. Over 750,000 deaths. He refused to acknowledge Sikhism as his own religion and instead pushed it under Hinduism, which it's not. I can't speak for all Sikhs.
Right, 1 second. And scroll.
But I hate Gandhi a lot.
And that's the money shot right there. That's the panel you clip. Put that on Twitter.
Yeah. Screen capture.
What's so perfect about this is it's like a religious tolerance class. So this is like, oh boy, we're gonna learn about Gandhi as our unit on religious tolerance, and then there's just a kid there who has like actual history relevant to the real man. So this is kind of everything about hoity-toity American feel-good public school culture. I guess this is still private school, and that running into the reality of someone who knows something about a country that is outside of our borders.
Matt, you said you were getting DMs about this?
Also,
Yeah.
Wait, I want to hear more. What is that?
Do you want me to leak some DMs?
No. You don't have to leak the DMs, but just like
give us broad strokes and tell us who's at fault and how we can dox them.
Oh gosh.
I'm kidding.
No, I just meant like, are they like what type, broadly speaking?
Oh, that Gandhi is complicated. That you can praise some things and you can harshly validly criticize a lot of other things.
And that's honestly the fair about every single political figure that you can think of.
Yeah.
So like that's just kind of how it goes.
Well, and one thing you got to remember too is like India has been a mess for 1,000 years. Like
only 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, well, more than 1,000. I mean,
All right.
yeah, there's the church has been the Christian church has been active in India for 2,000 years, and for much of that, they were being accosted and assaulted.
You gotta share my screen. I didn't know Mrs. H had done this again, but we keep them coming, Mrs. H. These are fantastic. So we have the
Wait, what's going on?
This is our mascot for our show now. This is Spider Pickle. You had to be there.
You just watched last week's show.
Yeah. And apparently I'm going to be haunted by Spider Pickle until I give Mrs. H a copy of Red Rooster, which I may be able to do in the next couple of weeks. We'll see, because I'm going home and I might be able to access my copy of it. But is
that the version that had DRM protection baked into it?
No, he's got a physical.
No, I have physical copies.
Side note: Twitless bought the floppies, and I sent him the trade because I
wanted to see the stinger at the end, and you don't get the stinger, which boggles my mind. but you don't get the stinger unless you back the trade.
Well, and I didn't want it anymore because I didn't pay for it. That's a whole thing. Technically. Yeah. So anyway, there's Spider Pickle. We'll call that good. But yeah, the Gandhi's complicated. All of India is complicated. It's a giant mess, and it continues to be a giant mess. It hasn't stopped being a giant mess, and I don't think it ever will stop being a giant mess.
Whatever our opinions, whatever my uneducated opinions on Mr. Gandhi are, I think white liberals who worship Gandhi deserve to get owned all the time, as much as possible.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Evie says it reminds me when I found out about MLK's affairs. Yep.
Oh no.
Yep.
Oh no.
Plot twist. Humanity is complex. Very
all right. You did want to talk about women's basketball in this book.
Oh, I did
right?
want to talk about women's basketball.
Okay, I want to put on my feminist lenses again.
And
I just want to acknowledge the fact that I disavow Dragon Hoops. So while claiming to stand up for women's rights by portraying women's basketball, Gene Luen Yang clearly only did one incidental chapter on women's basketball while assuming that he needed to follow the men's basketball team all year. So that's just the stir and mix moderate feminism approach that we need to deconstruct and destroy.
Oh, entirely. I think
it's coming out. It's coming out with a vengeance.
It's time to play your clip.
Oh yeah,
let's do it.
We're gonna end the show with the clip.
Oh, you think? Okay.
Yeah. I gotta end the show with the clip. That's the thing is, but let's see. What page? Let me look up the pages so we can go ahead and talk about it.
I'm looking for him. Testify says he's here to save the stream.
No, he's not.
Oh man.
But that's okay.
You know who Testify is?
I'm aware of him.
Okay.
We haven't actually interacted because, I have a lot of sense.
The only thing I know about Testify is I made a video about someone else completely. I didn't mention Testify at all. And then Testify came and talked a lot about the guy on my video for some reason. Dude, I don't know who you are. I don't understand what all of these co-factions are in the Civil War.
All right. So, okay, I misspoke. Testify says this stream cannot be saved. So even his great power is unable to deliver us from
it's true.
our ennui.
Yeah, we've been dead for a long time. Testify.
Yeah. So sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Here we go. So
I got the. Which page do you want to start with?
17. Let's just go to 179.
170. There's a panel on 178 that I'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
So this is the one I would like to start with.
Okay, that's fine.
If it's okay.
I'm willing to work with you.
So there is a panel beforehand where the typical argument that are trotted out and discussed about the WNBA in particular, that it's not very interesting.
You can show it if you want.
Can I? Okay. So.
Yeah, go for it.
By the way, good job acknowledging that Little League is more popular than women's basketball while trying to own.
I know. Okay, I was just about to get to that. So this is the argument: women don't score as much, they don't run as fast, they don't dunk. Women's sports in general are not as worth watching. And then Yang decides to try and interrogate this, and this is where he kind of falls. His argument falls on its face. Are scoring and running really to blame? As sports columnist Sarah Spain points out, Little League baseball players neither score as much nor run as fast as their professional counterparts, yet the Little League World Series draws millions of viewers every year. So that argument doesn't really work. Okay, Sarah Spain, let's take apart your argument for just a second. So why do people watch Little League even though they don't score? Because they're invested in the little kids and the little kids are cute. So your argument as a counter argument still doesn't address the argument above. So that's the
Women
first
actually
point.
want to watch Little League.
Exactly.
Whoa!
Second point, okay, which is even more, I think, deleterious to Yang's point. Does Yang watch the WNBA? I can guarantee you he does not, because he barely watched the games that he was supposed to follow for this book. There are 2 times that he tried to get out of it. One time he did, one time he didn't. So I can guarantee you, and every time he shows himself watching TV with his family, they're watching basically superhero stuff. So Yang doesn't even watch the WNBA. So the idea that it's like, well, guys, you guys are all kind of sexist, that's why you don't watch the WNBA, is like, it's wrong on like several levels. And it's just really frustrating because
half of his life is devoted to his family, so he doesn't have time for women's basketball.
Unless his little girl started playing ball. You don't know, Matt.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's
Okay,
true.
I want to interject a thought here. This is an avenue where if Yang was doing like slam dunk and Yang wasn't doing dragon hoops, if he wasn't doing like the personal thing, the way you could get someone invested, what's his name? I think his name is like oh gosh, I'm gonna mangle his name if I try to guess. It's the same manga author who's created Vagabond, and it's about wheelchair basketball, right? And so everybody would ask him, well, why'd you do a story about wheelchair basketball? He says, because I saw a story there. Like he sees this narrative of injured people excelling at something, and that really speaks to him. And then you see these images of it, and it looks like the most metal stuff that's ever existed, right? So a artist, when he looks at something like wheelchair basketball and says there's a story in that, he can bring the romance of it to life, right? So we could, if we take all of the feminist arguments for women's basketball and throw those away, we need one Japanese manga nerd to say, I like women's basketball, and then do a really intense manga about the drama of women's basketball. And that would actually make the argument better. You can't browbeat someone into seeing the romance of a sport.
Yeah. Star Storyteller has a counterpoint. Said kids are cute. Maybe if women wore cute outfits, they'd get more eyeballs.
That's the second solution. Is bikinis bikinis would make women's basketball top rated.
Norm Macdonald has basically a little joke he made about this that kind of encapsulates it, which is the fact that there are women's sports that get a lot of views, like, beach volleyball, ice skating, and there's reasons why. And there are reasons why, in order to be good at basketball, you tend to need to have a build that looks more masculine. And that just doesn't translate in the same way that the physique you can have while playing beach volleyball does.
And this actually comes to the point this Gene specifically going for with this segment, right? One of the things is the women don't play as fast. They don't dunk. It's just less exciting to watch, right? And men didn't dunk for a long, long time. Basketball was still wildly popular, so I don't even think that that's necessarily a good argument. But what he does is he brings up Georgianne Wells, right? And Georgianne Wells was a college ball player who went on to, I think, play for the WNBA, but apparently in one game that no one was at, because it was a women's basketball game, she actually did pull off a slam dunk.
Did anyone else look up this video? I managed to find it.
I
did you?
Did you want to watch it? Yeah.
Sure.
No. And I'm proud to say
I have no interest in watching.
Stick with
We'll
the
watch
meme.
it after. We'll watch the after show.
It's a cool dunk. It is.
I'm going to see it. But here's the problem with it. So the whole issue is nobody was there to watch it.
She's tall too. She's 6'7". That's a tall lady.
That's a tall woman.
That's a tall woman.
My cousin who started for the University of Wyoming team was 6'3". So, and she's bigger than I am. Anyway, I'm not a small person. But anyway, but back to the point. That she pulled this off, this dunk, one time, and it was on film, but the evil opponent coach wouldn't let it go until after he died, and they finally, you can see the dunk, and she really does it one time in college and never again. And so Yang's point is like, women can do anything, and yet,
Do you think Gene understands that he has a weak argument and he's compensating, or does he think that that's a great argument? Because I couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell either, but it was one of those things where it's like, okay, you've got all the story, and yeah, dude, the other coach, the opposing coach was a dick. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but like, if you
Amanda's insecure, I think he knows, because he deliberately frames it. Like he's doing several things in this book. He's deliberately framing it in a particular way.
The story of the first woman getting a slam dunk is potentially an interesting story.
Yeah,
when you frame it as you're a bigot if you don't like women's basketball, then you've spoiled the story, because it's no longer really about the woman doing a slam dunk. It's now about you, the audience. You need to watch this stuff.
Marm, that's the part that I think is so hilarious, because like exactly what you just said. You guys need to watch WNBA. Yang doesn't watch WNBA. It's that the argument is, it falls apart on its face because
it's one of those things where, like,
the arguer doesn't do it.
So if Ed Piscor did Dragon Hoops, he would have the name of every single woman basketball player ever. And he'd have like every cool little story about interpersonal drama that ever occurred in women's basketball. And he'd have the name of every, folk singer-songwriter musician who was inspired by women's basketball. Like, have you guys read Hip Hop Family Tree?
I haven't.
I have not.
No.
All right. That is... that's the reason why Ed Piscor got tapped to do X-Men Grand Design. But that is the case study of how to make someone... I am so white, I have not cared or listened to rap in my life. It got me invested in the world of rap by saying the world of rap was a story. It emerged with these personalities clashing and experimenting and creating things. And Piscor is not...
argument there, I guess.
Yeah, and Piscor is not a character in Hip Hop Family Tree. Maybe there's like a little picture of him at the beginning where you can't believe he's white, and then his entire book is this love letter to this field of nonfiction. So Yang, I've joked that I kind of like want to encourage Yang to pursue nonfiction comics, but there's a high bar for nonfiction comics, and that's really where you've got to finally put aside whatever your issue or your story is and dive into that world and enjoy that world, so that love of that world can fill you up. Dragon Hoops is mostly like a few little interesting Wikipedia articles that are okay, like the creation of the sport, okay, like first women's basketball, okay, that's kind of cool. But Yang as narrator is actually stopping me from diving into this world fully, I think.
Yeah, he doesn't get out of the way of an interesting story, and it's the alleged shyness that's masking a kind of self-obsession, I guess, an insecure anxiety that means he has to, if he's going to spend a year researching this and years drawing it, he has to make it about himself to work out some stuff he's going through, which is unfortunate.
So this is where I need to make my final, I think one of my final points about Yang that also means why I've kind of grown weary with him is that him working out all his issues kind of obfuscates a very important point about him, which is the fact that although he seems to be working out all these issues, and those issues seem to posit him as a underdog, as someone who is potentially a victim of the prejudices of the culture in which he resides, ignores the fact that Yang, without a doubt, and I can pretty much objectively prove this, Yang is one of the most privileged human beings on planet Earth to have ever lived. Break this down. So Yang has been able to write Superman, not just draw, but it's because I don't think he's drawn him, but he's been able to, as a writer, he's been able to control the story for Superman 3 separate times. I believe in the mainstream continuity, and then on the new Superman, where he got to completely recast him as his own race, the Chinese Superman story, and then for Superman versus the Klan. So Google the amount of people, if you want a fun little exercise, Google the amount of people who have ever written Superman, and then after that, Google all the people who have ever wanted to write Superman and compare the results. Yang is a successful author. So I'm assuming he's doing it monetarily well. He has, I think, several bestsellers, which will provide him money and security. He lives in California. And so it's just, no matter how you break this down.
That's not really a point of privilege. I mean, that poor bastard lives in California. He probably doesn't even know how much
to live in California.
So sure. Touche. But to wrap up this point, he is still, in my opinion, kind of passively aggressively whining about his role in life, and this
about
man
not getting enough.
And that's the thing, is there's I almost wanted to bring this to a scriptural point in Proverbs. There's, I think it's the Proverbs of Lemuel or something, and it's like there are like 5 things in life that are never satisfied or something, or whatever. The number of things that are never satisfied. And it's like fire is never satisfied. It will continue to burn. And I wanted to add to that list like gamma males who have insecurity and need constant validation in their lives.
That like, paradigm is so goddamn cringy.
Okay, call it beta, whatever. It's the same. It's the same breakdown.
I don't like the evolutionary aspects of alpha, beta, gamma, but I appreciate.
It also doesn't really make sense. But anyway, go ahead.
Whatever. It's still describing something that's very observable.
Right. That part. About
so like
Woody Allen syndrome. Yeah.
Sure. Like however you want to call it. I just say beta, because it's funny to say. But like the beta who needs validation will never be satisfied. They can have Oscars. Yeah, exactly. They can have Oscars and millions of dollars, and they'll still be like, oh well, I'm still like,
Well, and once again, that comes down to the corruption within the heart of men. I mean, we're all dirt.
Sure,
I can't hold it against Gene because he's struggling with being dirt. Most people don't even get around to the idea of imagining that they're dirt.
That's fair. I just say that after I think the 5 or however many books we've read, I've hit this point where I'm just tired of it, and I need a break from that. Because like I said, spending time in that brain space. I'm like, I need to spend time in someone else's brain space. I want Tim Lim. I want the person who says, "Give me America. I'm having a great time. Go get him." Like he and Pellegrini write in Common America. I want that mindset as a palate cleanser for shucks. I write Superman and I have such a hard life. It's like, do you know how many people would like commit crimes to get a chance to just pitch, not write, but to get into the room to pitch a Superman story? Like, and the fact that he's like, he gets to put that call on hold. There's a panel where he puts the call from his agent on hold to lock in the Superman deal. That is the level of privilege upon which Gene Yang gets to live. This man does not, in my opinion, does not get to tell me about anything about privilege. So like, I'm so sorry.
So back to
I'll call you back about the Superman deal. Give me a break.
Back to George Ann Wells and the topic of women's.
Wait, can I stick it to Twitless for one thing?
Okay, yes.
And to you, Matt, like he wants to put the thing on hold because they're asking him to do something that's outside of Superman's character, right?
Yeah, I
So,
actually like that scene.
That's
I
true.
like
I thought
that.
you guys
Okay,
would like that. Yeah.
I will give him that. That is fair. I did appreciate
He's not
that.
subverting expectations. He doesn't want to do that.
Well,
so.
I don't know how it played out. He said you have to read what I did. So I don't know. Does anyone familiar with was that New 52 that he was doing?
Yeah.
Is anyone familiar with that
I
storyline?
read a little of, if it's Shank Superman, I read a little of that, but I don't know if Yang worked on that. Great. Sure. Well, should we? I don't know if we want to torture ourselves more, though. Do we?
Not right away.
All right.
Yeah.
But anyway, but back to what I was talking about, George Ann Wells.
Yep.
This whole powerful dunk moment, and that if that like Yang puts it forward, like this is like everybody should love women's basketball because this thing happened. But it happened once. It wasn't like Marmaduke said. The story of the first woman to dunk a basketball would be a really interesting story in its own right. Mm-hmm. And yes, it 100% would be a great, interesting story in its first right. But it's not the story of the first woman to dunk a basketball. To date, to my knowledge, it's the story of the only woman to dunk a basketball one time. So you still don't have a situation where, like, oh, this evens the playing field for all of the. No, it doesn't. It's still not even the same thing. If part of what you love about basketball is the excellence that male performance can bring, women have not been able to replicate that, and there are reasons for that. And it's not a value statement about who women are as human beings, but it is a statement about what they bring to the entertainment aspect of this particular sport.
Clearly women, I mean, anyone who watches the Olympics knows that there are many sports where women
draw a lot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the top shooters
do so like better. It's more interesting to watch a woman do that than a man.
Yep.
You know,
right? But
a lot of it just has,
in the shooting sports, some of the most competitive athletes are women in the shooting sports, which shocks me to find that out. But
that's interesting.
Oh, there's some chemical reasons for that. The testosterone that runs through your system makes it. I think it's testosterone makes it easier for your as you age for your arms to shake more, and women don't have that problem. So they can have a steadier aim. For longer, I think it's either testosterone or another one of the chemicals that are running through the.
I like that. See, we need to break down. There's this masculine normative hierarchy assumption that Gene has, where he's just saying like what he just takes the received wisdom of current year and says how can I show that something's wrong because something isn't being recognized from this masculine normative perspective.
So what you're telling me, Twitless, is that the fact that that I've gone from being a Superman to a schmuck, and now that I'm over 40, has more to do with me being super testosterone-y than it does with me sitting at a desk all day. I'll take that.
Okay,
I'll take that.
As long as I'll give you that. As long as you highlight Dominic's comment where he says Twitless has a point with his argument.
Sure. Dominic Powell says Twitless has a point. His argument.
Is Testify still here? You should screen cap.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, you can go back and replay. Some of these people won't be satisfied with what they have, even in success. Individuals who actually went through the ringer will take these guys up to task. And I do think that there's a factor. And I don't think, and here's, I think, something that like when it comes to Gene's success, like Gene's definitely in a privileged position, but I don't necessarily believe that's something that when most people think privilege, they think it's because, you were handed it. I think his early works were worthy of the attention that he got. And while I think, based on some of the shorter work I've done, I might be, I'm going to toot my own horn. I think that what I did with the St. Nick story is every bit as compelling as some of the stuff within Boxers and Saints. It's not as big a story; it's a much smaller story, but I think it's as compelling a story.
If it's more theologically cogent, I'll actually give you more credit because that's my biggest problem with the Boxers and Saints.
Well, you'll have to ask Nick if you can get a comp copy. I'd give you one, but it's not mine to give. So I was hired for that job. But
Evie has a question for us. Just I want to make sure we get to it. She says she had a question about. Forgive me if you explained this already, but what makes it hard to dunk a ball? I don't know much about the sport.
Okay, there's a couple things. One, the basketball is 10 feet above the ground, right? So that means you've got to get up to, that 10 feet from ground level. So if you are, it's easier to jump when you're taller, but when you're taller, it takes a lot more muscle, an exponential larger amount of muscle to elevate yourself that extra distance. So if you are 6'5", it takes a chunk of muscle to get up to 10 feet to get that extra 3.5 feet.
Yeah.
But when you're bigger, it's even more muscle. So it's a smaller distance, but it's like there's a ratio with how bones and muscles grow.
And you have a lot of you have a lot of mass you have to move.
A lot of mass you have to move. But that's just the thing is, you also have to get the distance of the ball and the elbow above. So it's even more than that 3.5 feet or whatever it is, because you've got to be able to get above the rim enough to control the ball enough to get up over the top of it. So like when I was in my prime, which has been a few years ago, I could get up and grab the rim, right? I could get my hand like above this, right? But I couldn't get to the ball. I was at 6'2". I was not capable of, and I probably could have been capable if I'd have really worked out the way to plan for that. But it's really rare for somebody 6'2" to get to that. But 6'4", 6'5", it's doable with a little more training. But I could get right here, but that's it. So for it just takes a lot of strength and coordination to be able to get enough above the rim where you can control that ball down into it.
So it's more of I would say that for the WNBA, it's probably more of a question of the muscle mass than the coordination or anything. It's probably just it breaks down.
Women, even tall women, don't get as tall as tall men, because height growth it's a coordination of pituitary hormone and testosterone, and so women just don't get as tall on average. There are ones that do clearly,
like Wells 6'7". That is a tall woman.
Tall woman.
There's also there's two types of muscle fibers. There's short and long twitch, and you need a lot of short twitch in basketball is my understanding, and including with a lot of those jumps.
Matt's spitting his expertise.
Yeah.
And incidentally, certain people of certain heritages have more short twitch than others, which is why you see the complexion change across the history of basketball, which he's documenting. So.
Fresher Luke says, "Please mention my tall women fetish."
No.
Yes.
Oops.
Damn it, we already did.
Okay.
Welcome, waifus. They're waifus. They drink whey protein shakes.
Forsaken Gods 2 is going to be great. Looking forward to it.
We're not putting that on the screen. Okay.
Can we say can we talk about the art for a minute?
Sure. Let's do it, man.
To get y'all's quick assessment. What'd you guys think of the art? We've seen him draw a lot now. We've seen him draw like 1,500 pages at this point.
He's pushed further than he did in American-born Chinese. He's trying things like, I don't know, like even in that panel, like he's elongating figures. He's trying some in like the basketball scenes, he's trying some like dramatic, close-ups and things that are a little out of his comfort zone. He's not doing like exciting, slam dunk manga type of work yet, but he's definitely pushing beyond like the range of his earlier comfort zone. So I just settled into it and enjoyed it. And really for the basketball scenes where Yang receded into the background, it's just, will the basketball team win the game? That read as just fun, immersive basketball kind of stuff. And he paid some attention to highlighting details of the game and their significance. Sometimes I was just like, I had to read carefully to follow the flow of the game. So he wasn't doing a beat by beat. I'm going to show you like the feeling of watching this game and how invested everybody got in it. It's a little bit more like, here's just a few glimpses or here's a few scenes from a game. If it was less about him and more about the game, that's something he could have gone into. He could have like spent a whole chapter on a game and the emotional beats of that game and why you build up to this crazy intensity watching these things if you understand the game. So I'd still give him props for trying.
I
Mhm.
think that Gene Lewen's art. I'm going to try to say something positive because I've been kind of negative this stream, but
This is true.
I'm struggling a bit because I'll say the negative part first. So I feel like that the issues that Yang has, they infiltrate his artwork. I feel like there's this lack of energy that comes from just his internal struggle. So we get these very passive figures in his, not necessarily in his writing, because Superman smashes the Klan, we definitely had some action, right? But when he's drawing action, there's just something, it almost, dare I say, limp at times.
Yeah, sure.
So I would say that
Kind of rounded off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one thing he does well, though, is his style, I think, lends itself to portraying emotional subtlety. Because even though he's got simple figures, I think that there are panels that you can read and you're like silent panels where you're just looking at a character's expression and you're like, I just know what this person is thinking. So I feel like Yang is in his wheelhouse when he's portraying emotional complexity through, like, right here, right? When you compare the prologue Gene, he's kind of like sad, and now he's not like ecstatic, but you can tell he's like, it's kind of like what Marm was saying. He's made progress. And so he's kind of reconciling himself. He's wearing the Dragon Pride shirt. He's got a basketball in his hand. He's got not a full grin, but a warm smile that has a layer of contemplation to it. And so the fact that Yang can, through simplicity, create emotional complexity, I'd say is probably, I think, where his strengths are.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't have any problem with it at all, with the art. Yang's got his own style. It's overly cartoony at times, but I'm not going to judge that because you guys have seen what I can draw. So I thought it served the story well.
Okay. Do you guys know a cartoonist who's just named Jason? That's it, Jason.
No.
Like J and then S-O-N?
No, I think it's spelled the normal way.
Oh,
J-A-S-O-N.
That's computer language, dude.
All right. You might Twitless, you might like it based on like that emotional subtlety. Like Jason's thing is he draws extremely simple cartoon animals where they're so simplified you don't even recognize them as like whatever animal they're supposed to be. And they're almost probably like two expressions, right? So extremely limited language and then pulls a lot of emotional variation out of that extremely limited palette. So I actually kind of like picked up like that, I don't know, like thousand yard stare. Gene has 1,000-yard stare in every panel of Dragon Hoops, but some of his characters do have little nudges to them. Yeah, and I think that's true all the way back, going all the way back to American Born Chinese. I don't know. Twitless is really overanalyzing a bunch of what?
Lines.
A bunch of lines that connected on paper.
He's probably right, but it's kind of my job.
I think overanalyzing a bunch of lines organized on a page.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a
yeah.
It seems to me like there's a Twitless would know better than I would, but it seems like that there's academic comics, and that has there's an accent, there's a visual accent to a particular type of comics. You know, from what's the one that they did all those the movies with the kid from Arrested Development, and he's chasing after ex-boyfriends.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, like ever since Scott Pilgrim, I think there's been somehow that got elevated, where that accent from that sort of East meets West approach, that got elevated as like an upper crust accent, I suppose. I don't know. And Gene's kind of fluent in that.
It's
in a way
also,
where
it's coming from the underground comics movement with Crumb and Klaus and a bunch of the underground comics people, because there were a lot of what they were doing
in this. there's the rounded shapes and the
Mhm. A lot of
yeah
what
that's
they
yeah
Chris Ware. If you actually,
yeah.
let me pull up Chris Ware, and you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, I could see some Yang in that." But there is a in the basically the comics that no one who goes to a comic book shop reads, but people who read the New York Times for suggestions on comics read.
yeah it's completely siloed, but it's comics to a particular to people who speak a certain accent, you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and it's funny that like he pushes himself more. I think this is the best art I've seen from him, and I think
the Scott
that
Pilgrim
was
thing
because
is the crossover.
Can we
style.
review Jimmy Corrigan for this stream?
Ooh,
I-
neat.
Sure.
Sure.
Fine.
Okay.
I'll read whatever, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
So
you
that
guys,
that
you guys are in
accent
for
works
you guys are
well.
in for a treat.
I think I know
Did
what
you
you're
want
talking
to? Did you
about.
want
Oh, boy.
to? Okay, we'll talk about that after the stream.
Okay,
but-
I'm sorry.
First of all, Evie says, "Where can I find this Jason?" Which I thought her phrasing is amazing.
Yeah, well, I just want to say like so there's two things that he wants to do with like visually with his accent here,
Okay.
and that's document people talking to him, you know, just like staring at you, the reader, as you know, as you're like embodying Gene as he's like reporting on this stuff. So he just wants to do the Sunday strip square, and there's a head, and he's giving you factual information as he's reporting it. And so that accent works well here. He tries to use the same accent to kind of draw like really dynamic you know, action scenes, these superheroes in motion. And I don't think he there's been previous times where he's tried to do action and it's just felt so limp that I wasn't very inspired. In this comic, visually, I was pretty inspired when it came to the basketball scenes, you know, the actual games. Like somehow he's got the accent working where I'm okay with like the formulaic, like everyone is super on model constantly. You know what I mean? Like he gets really excited if he pushes the model like 10%. Like compared to think of if you compare to Fresher Luke, who's going to, you know, I think he's comfortable. He's a better artist, obviously, but he's also speaking with a very different. He's speaking with an animator's accent, so he can go off model every single panel. You'll never see the character exactly on model, but you always know it's the same character. With him, he's almost copying and pasting. You'll see it with the coach a lot. It's the same face, the same, you know. But that's part of the act. That's part of the visual. That's the repertoire.
Yeah. So that's why I brought
But
up.
that's completely fine. That's not a weakness. It's just that's a different formula. You know what I mean? It can hurt like a basketball scene, but it looks great with the reporting scene. You know, it just, you know. Anyway,
it's a different register. It's
register.
it's a different way of speaking through comics, and it's a little reminiscent of things like we're seeing here on this page with Chris Ware a little bit. Chris Ware.
Oh, this is the like OCD, the on the spectrum guy, right?
I don't know.
Like his comics are just like
they're very
put you on the
architectural. I believe I think Rare has a background in architecture, and he is almost sterilely clinical in how he sets them up. But you can see, like, even in the coloring choices, you can see the similarities between Yang and a guy like Chris Ware. And the two of them are both working in the more what I would call literary comics, or at least considered literary comics. I actually think the definition of literary comics.
They're writing comics that appeal to the intellectual desire to editorialize, right? So I like read essays about these comics. I just remember thinking,
exactly.
Hearing descriptions of it and saying, I don't want to read that.
Exactly.
But still reading to understand the author's point about it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's for the New Yorker crowd. And like I said, the thing about Yang is that he's kind of straddling. He's kind of in that camp, but he's got enough, I guess, enough energy to appeal to the YA crowd. So he's got some.
Like the braces, But
I'll also say, the other one who I guess it's probably a good comparison to bring up would be Telgemeier.
Okay,
I said braces.
I started reading Telgemeier last year, and I was just warmly surprised. Like I had heard all of this, like Comicsgate discussion of Telgemeier, and I thought, oh no, this is gonna be woke, and it's just autobiographic.
Girls comics, right?
I read Smile. I was not particularly impressed, but I wasn't really that offended, except for the fact that once again we had a very privileged person talking about how she was the underdog, which irritated me again. We could talk about that at length some other time.
Okay. This might be a woman thing. I feel like for women, the sharing of ordinary experiences especially with other women, with gal pals, that's like a thing, right? And then for a boy, it needs to be an adventure narrative. And the fact that for a little boy it needs to be an adventure narrative, a little boy instantly has like this epic setting for the inner working out of his feelings. There's a dragon, I must go kill the dragon, right? Whereas for a girl, it's like, oh no, I don't know how I feel about my sister, right? So I actually kind of like root
imminently plausible scenarios.
My issue with Telgemeier, this is becoming a Telgemeier stream. My issue with Telgemeier had to do with the fact that she talks about being bullied, but she basically brings up basically just normal girls just being normal girls to each other, but she takes and internalizes things, in ways that are just like, get over yourself, honey.
Oh, no.
So
I feel like we've read this comic.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I'm saying. It's flashes.
I almost want to review Smile, but we've done it. Yeah.
So, quick. Well, we'll ask that after a second. Okay. So, because we're almost at 2 hours. I tell you guys, I've been trying to keep the shows to an hour, right?
Why?
Yeah. Why? Why? Because I just felt like it was good for my mental health when I restarted the show. I thought I need to contain this into a shape that makes sense. But when we started the pre-show, just chatting before Matt got here, I was like, oh hell, this is a 2-hour show at minimum.
This one's going.
So,
this is why I don't show up till 5 minutes before.
Well, I just knew it was going to be long. I could feel the energy in the air.
Yeah.
So, Evie says that's a thing I can confirm. Just talking about women and feelings, I think.
As we wrap up,
and that's fine, obviously. But
men and women are different.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, I'd love to hear the panel just say recommend or not recommend, or give a rating if they have one.
Okay, I think that's a good one. I would recommend. I would say that your mileage may vary, depending on how well you can connect the story. So I would say for me, I thought it was a 7 out of 10. I sat down and read it in one sitting. I loved it. But I didn't love it so much that I think it's a must read. But I think it's well worth reading. So I'd say a 7 out of 10.
Okay, I said 6 out of 10 earlier, meaning, and actually I don't grade on a curve. So for me, 6 out of 10 is a positive statement. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't pay money for it. I would check it out from the library and read it with a nephew or niece. And it's not evil. Evil books, I'm upset even if I got it from the library, that evil corrupted my soul by touching it. But that's getting down into like the 3 territory.
Gotcha. I'll say for me, it was kind of midway for me, 5, 6 out of 10. So just kind of average in a sense. I think it is a conditional recommend. The conditions would be if you're kind of interested in a kind of a slice of life basketball story told in a emotionally pastoral way. Like if you want action, like go read a manga about basketball, because this is not going to be your story.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story it's half memoir. There's a lot of memoir here. So if you like reading memoir, that's another thing I would say. You have to be in the mood for a good dash of memoir and history for this book. So on those conditions, I think it is a recommend. I would not recommend reading this after reading 5 other Yang works, because you may end up like me and just be like, and just get fed up with parts of Yang that you may or may not like. I feel like if I had read this book first, or if there'd been enough time in between, I might not have had, because some of the issues I've got, they're not this book's issue. They're issues that have built up over several books. It's like gaining an allergic reaction over time because you've had too much, I don't know, spicy food or something. Yeah, for me, it's a conditional recommend. So I know I've said some negative things, but like I said, the things the book does well, I think it does pretty well. So.
I want to say 7 out of 10, but I'm willing to go a little higher. I might even say bump up, 7.3, 7.5.
Oh, wow.
And for me, that's a lot of that has to do with the art, because I think I was pretty excited with how he was keeping me interested. He's got a range and he's got a register and he's got a restricted way of drawing, but he pushed himself more here, and I don't know. I just saw a lot of dynamism that was interesting. I think the character, what he tries to do, because I was able to just to move more quickly, because I found like through the memoir parts, because I found that he was usually losing me, and he needed an editor. Like sometimes I think he's like pay per page with these things. Like I don't know why all his books have to. That must be another Woody Allen syndrome thing, where all his books have to be this many pages, which is it's excessive. He could have told us in a third as many pages or as half as many pages. There's a lot of but the things he thought he was bringing to the table to plus the story, I think, made it it kind of bogged it down and had confused narratives. And I don't think Gene had a strong emotional or narrative sense of what he wanted to do with any of that, so it just felt like a distraction. But the action stuff and the characters of the team, the coach and the team players, were fascinating, I thought. So that made it enough to make me excited. I enjoyed. When I say 7.5, like, yeah, I'm thinking
It's going higher as you talk. It's going to be an 8 by the time you're done.
So, yeah. Yeah. That's not a D or a C. That's me saying, like, yeah, I'd recommend, like, looking at the corpus of what he's done. I think this is higher up there. We've read worse Gene
I think
stuff.
it's actually interesting. I think it's actually more pages than Boxers and Saints got. Which
gosh,
is interesting. Yeah. I think if you actually look at the page.
Why does he do that? It's
he wrote it after Boxers and Saints. I would imagine part of that is, as an author, you don't want to go back. You want to continue to go forward. I wrote, my last book was 200 pages. Well, this one's got to be 300 pages and be even more researched, because he did for a topic he knows nothing about. As he admitted, he did go and do his homework. As he presents the history of men's basketball, women's basketball, Black people in basketball, Mike, the first superstar guy, a couple of different biographies. And then of course his own, memoir.
Well, and in the library copy that I have, there's an extensive section in the back going through the things that were edited, that were fictionalized.
The notes, yeah. The notes he's got in there,
the notes he's got, and I thought that was hilarious. So, I mean, not hilarious.
I think normally,
really
I feel like most writers will go. What's the old trope? Like, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. Like the more experience you get, you learn how to be just as impactful with less words and with less pages. So I'm surprised that he continually writes these tomes, and draws them. When I feel like the more experience, I don't know, maybe that's what Superman's doing for him.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. I haven't.
Anyway,
Well, Superman versus the Klan wasn't this big, but that also was an adaptation. So that
felt more condensed and expertly.
And the audience as well for it, because again, the audience for Dragon Hoops is for people who are into memoir and this type of thing. And I think, and I think they're used to a longer work. Superman versus the Klan could not have been a whole lot longer without people just saying, "Oh my gosh, this is dragging on."
Yeah, I would agree.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're probably used to this length in those circles.
Yeah, some of them anyway. So final notes, conversation, because I really want to hear this. Marm, Evie asked, "What books would you call evil?"
Okay, I don't even remember the title of it, but there's like a Captain Marvel book where she casually assaults 2 security guards while she's going on her girls' night out, and the narrator doesn't even call attention to it. So it's clearly just supposed to be like, oh, haha, she's having her fun night out, gang, and serves those powerless security guard's right for asking her what she's doing, breaking and entering at midnight. Well, that's evil. I think I read a Nancy Drew book I thought was evil, where
A
she
Nancy Drew book?
No,
Yeah.
yeah, there was
Great.
it was I can't remember who I read the first issue was on a Free Comics Day book, and it was I think it was
Wait,
Nancy Drew Free Comic Book Day book.
oh, it's a
and she-
comic of Nancy Drew. Okay, I thought you were talking about like Crow's novels.
Right.
I was like,
Yeah,
what?
like-
those are all excellent.
Old school is best, but this was like hip upper scale Mean Girls Nancy Drew, and it had some line about how, oh, that boy is dumb, so you should cheat on him, and that's the hero speaking. Anything I think that the author is expressly condoning and celebrating evil deserves to be burned. I don't know how else to say it. Like I don't even feel good giving it away and letting that go infect some 6-year-old girl's mind. So it either stays in my library so I can contain the evil, or if I don't want it anymore, I'll just chuck it. That's an evil book.
I actually saved that out from the stuff because I was going to do a Quarter Bin Folly about it, but I never got around to writing it because life got busy. So yeah, and also she also suggests "Real" by Takahino Inoue.
Yeah,
Supposed to write.
Yeah, Inoue. Yeah.
That was the artist I was trying to think of earlier. Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, that's
She
back
mentioned it
in the
earlier when we were talking about stuff.
Can I
I
just
would like to say Twitless. I think that like the meme I have posted here is an explanation of what's really going on. With your Yang issue. But
My
I might
Yang
be wrong
issues-
about that.
Are you saying that I'm blaming him, or
I think you may be attaching a greater amount of your frustration with critical theory upon this book.
I think
this meme could either work as a jab at Twitless or a jab at Yang.
I was just about to say I thought you
that's
posted
a good one, Marm. Maybe it's both. Could it be both?
When you posted that, that's how I read it. I read it as, oh, that's what Yang's doing, and I was like, yeah, I agree. That's exactly how I read it.
It may be both, because I do think that Yang is internalizing issues that aren't necessarily internal, and I think his interactions with the kids. I think his interactions with the kids and how they don't care about racism because they know they're friends.
Do you remember when the Indian kid or the Punjabi kid was like, "Hey, can you draw my hair this way?"
Yeah.
Like, no.
I thought it would help reveal you as a Punjabi character.
Which is important to your story. I need to racially segregate you visually so that people understand that you're not like the other kids. That's important.
My hair to look cool.
Matt C, 8 out of 10. May I remind you, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know. You swallow the black pill and then you just kind of live, laugh, love.
I will say the meme you did of American-born Chinese with coronavirus is really funny.
It was your idea.
So we're gonna wrap it today, guys. We have anything we want to go ahead and talk about kind of stuff?
Well, if
I survived,
if we continue,
my channel nearly getting deleted, so you should come back to the #1 Marmaduke fan show where we actually have videos again.
Wow. Copyrighted content or something? What happened?
My manga reviews. The Shogakukan just went through all my channel, and anything that had the title of a Shogakukan manga in it, they just automatically flag that. Flag.
Oh, that's awful.
I beat them on all of them, but there are no more Shogakukan manga reviews on my channel. I learned my lesson. They don't get positive reviews anymore on their products.
No.
So it seems weird that they wouldn't just I've gotten not strikes, but I've gotten copyright notices where any ad revenue you would ever get goes to this person, and I'm like, well, I don't care. I don't get the ad revenue anyway. Go ahead and give it to them.
Well, yeah. So that's sort of like a YouTube giving people options below the nuclear option, but apparently Japan in general and Shogakukan in particular, I didn't know this. Japan doesn't have fair use laws. So if a Japanese company decides they don't like what you're doing with their content, they'll just go nuclear on you. And if they decide to treat it as a strike rather than just as a takedown request, they could take your whole channel down if you don't push back on it. So
See,
Whatever.
here's
But Japan's not that based, apparently.
So, and here's an issue. The reason this is even an issue is because Barack Obama gave the internet to the world after we invented it. That's a problem.
Did he?
It should be governed by U.S. law because we invented it.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
gotta bring out those old memes.
Oh my God! Well, it's true, man. Okay. Anyway, Matt, what do you got going on?
I'm hitting the drawing table, and I'm drawing Kyrie 3, and I got a cyberpunk story in the works that's going to be a manga with a real life Japanese person drawing it.
Cool.
And with Larry Bernard of Mattriarchy fame, and then hopefully some short stories down the road, more with Matt Rhys, and that's just exciting things. And I guess if we're going to continue, if we're evolving away from Gene here, and we go to there's some talks about other people who we might do, and I'm getting more and more interested in who the next person can be, because I think anyway, well, we won't spoil that, but just like we all have complicated views on Gene here, there's lots of other Christian artists who have drawn things and wrestled with deep themes that we also have complicated thoughts on as well. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be exciting. Also, Kyrie is currently for sale at KyrieComic.com. Am I right? And,
yeah.
I believe the link's in the description. So guys, go out there, buy some Kyrie. You will not be disappointed. Yeah. So, did Matt watch Netflix Cowboy Bebop yet? Which Matt? I know I will not watch it because I don't have a Netflix account and they get none of my money. So
that's fair.
I watched one episode and just kind of yawned, and then watched a 90s movie.
Did you hear
I
that?
don't understand why that even exists. You're not going to improve on it.
Netflix is apparently there's talks. I don't know how serious they are, but they seem to be serious talks of Netflix doing a live action Mega Man.
Of course.
Okay. Marmaduke, you are still working on Jane
Smith
Wannabe Gladiator.
Yep. Page 57 is completed and published on Webtoons. I'm still managing about one page a week.
Oh, cool.
I need to catch up.
Very nice.
I need to catch up again. I think I last one I read was 48.
All right. Got some new stuff for you.
Good.
Exciting twists. World building.
Twitless has this little comic. You might probably heard about it. It's okay. It's nothing to write home about. And you can buy his Omega Girl, which
share
is
my
really,
screen.
really good.
I got my screen shared.
Oh, I see that now.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Omega Girl is definitely worth your time.
And
there we go.
Thank you, appreciate that. And leave a review if you bought it and liked it, either on Indie Planet or Amazon. Feel free to leave a review and say really nice things, or not. You can say whatever you want. It's a free country. But one of those things will get you a cookie if I ever meet you. So, Craig, now I need to go buy some cookies.
Can confirm.
But buy The Adventures of Omega Girl. Issue 2 has been submitted to Indie Planet. Will be showing up there shortly as soon as they get around to posting that. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Very cool. And I, of course, hey, go if you want to check out what I've been working on. You can Kyrie Wild Tales of Kyrie Volume 1's got a story I contributed to. The Saint Nick's Hunt under the Blue Moon Rising label, Nick Mueller's Demon Hunter Raven universe. That's my story. I really love it.
Yeah, very well received. Yeah, it
has been very well received, and it's put a small bit of pressure on me for the future that I am not prepared for. Oh my god. But also Force of Good and Evil, which is my first love in comics that I made because I've been working on it since 2005. Well, sort of 2003. But you can read everything so far. on our website there. So check it out.
Also, check out Super Schooled.
Yeah, I
you did
put
that.
The banner up there earlier.
Okay,
man.
sorry, I missed it.
When I was being super disparaging, I was talking about Super School.
I must have. Yeah. Oh, okay.
You missed my joke.
Oh, I thought you were being disparaging about Omega Girl. Okay.
Oh no, Omega Girl's great.
Okay, awesome.
Super School just steps on my toes too much. That's all.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm super jealous because you guys keep putting out new stuff, and I haven't had the chance to get back to it. So that's the frustrating thing.
It's all Taylor's
with
fault.
Forces, yeah, because Taylor's really talented.
He's a freaking machine, is what he is.
So good. I would steal him if I could. They say, hey Taylor, you want to draw a better comic for free? That's why TV says I'm going places, but they're all places you can get for free, like the City Park and the library and the mall.
All right, so don't remember we have that clip. We can't skip the clip.
Oh, of course not. Okay. So we're gonna call it.
By the way, I restrained myself from asking us to pull up the panel earlier because my belief about shit posts is that they are supposed to exist purely and without explanation. So I refuse to elaborate, no matter what you do to me.
Okay, that's fine. So, rivals.
Are we ready, kids?
Rival Super Schools united by fate. That's amazing.
We do need to do a crossover at some
point. I know.
Point.
I have it in my head. I just need to get the time to finish it. I've got to fix my
that'd be awesome first. You guys would do.
You fix your bathtub. Yeah, no, like
and a Jane Smith guest appearance somewhere.
That's gonna happen for sure. The metal speaking the words of my soul. You can get a lot of plays for free if you're willing to walk enough. I've got a sign on my office at work that says, "Isn't every place in walking distance if you have the time?" Okay, guys. Next week.
Very Welsh of you.
Yes, thank you. Next week we have the Mattriarchy returns with the discussion of patriotic comics. We've got #1 Marmaduke fan. No, not you. Although you could come if you want. Maybe.
Tim Lim.
Maybe not. Anyway, Tim Lim. We've got Captain Cummings and Captain Frugal. And who knows? Me. I'll be there. Probably Twitless. Maybe not.
Yeah, I'll be there.
So until then, until next time, keep reading comics and stay tuned for a special presentation.
Fewer people watch women's basketball. There are plenty of theories why. Women don't score as much. They don't run as fast. They don't dunk. Women's sports, in general, are not worth watching.
The police often question him just because they find him interesting. His beard alone has experienced more than a lesser man's entire body. His blood smells like cologne. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis.